Okay. Rabbi Dustai bar Yanai, Rabbi Dustai, the son of Yanai, used to say, Mishum Rabbi Meir, in the name of Rabbi Meir. Kol ashocheach davar echad mimishnato, anyone who forgets even one thing from his Mishnah, from that which he learned, okay, ma'aleh alav hakatuv ki'ilu mitchayev benafsho. The Torah counts it as if the person is mitchayev benafsho. We've seen that expression already numerous times, which means that the person is he's responsible for his own demise. Okay, why? Because it's a terrible crime in the eyes of the Torah for someone to forget their Torah learning. All right. So, seeing as that is the case, all right, says the Mishnah, someone who forgets davar echad, one thing from that which they learned, that's enough for us to say that this person is mitchayev benafsho, he's lost his right to life. Okay, that sounds, if that doesn't sound harsh, I don't know, then either you're a genius with a photographic memory or you're not listening. I mean, come on, right? Can we agree on that? Even if you forget one thing. And where do we learn this from? Shne'emar, as it says, Rak, hishamer lecha, be very careful. Ushmor nafshecha me'od, and guard your soul exceedingly. Pen tishkach et hadevarim asher ra'u einecha. Maybe you will forget these things that you saw at Har Sinai. Yachol afilu. So now the Mishnah says, okay, calm down, hold on a second. That means that if I forget one class, one thing that Rabbi Farhi taught me, then I'm supposed to die? I mean, that sounds excessive. I love Rabbi Farhi as much as the next guy, but, to use the term of Rand Paul, I don't know if it's the be-all and end-all, right? I don't know if he's, come on, you're going to tell me that obligates me to have, what's it called? The mitchayev benafsho. And says the Mishnah, oh, don't worry about it. Hold on, chill out for 1 second. That's not really what we're saying. What are we actually saying? Yachol afilu takfa alav mishnato. It could be. What if does that mean even if the guy, I don't know, he forgot, he was, he lost something in his learning. It got old, he forgot. Talmud Lomar, says the Torah, ufen yasuru milevavecha kol yimechayecha, and lest you remove it from your heart all the days of your life. Ha eno mitchayev benafsho, you are not liable for this punishment or for this negative statement. Ha eno mitchayev benafsho ad sheyeshev v'yisireh milibo, until he sits down, so to speak, with a specific intent to remove the words of Torah from his heart. Now, hold on a second. I hope you're with me on this, because 1 second, it doesn't sound like it sounds like now we just kind of mitigated this whole Mishnah. So the Mishnah starts off, let's get clear, like we always like to do. First understand what is the Mishnah teaching us, and then we can expound and expand on it together. First the Mishnah says, Rabbi Dustai bar Yanai says in the name of Rabbi Meir, if you forget anything that you learned, mitchayev benafsho. Where do we see it from? The Torah says, be very careful. Shmor nafshecha, guard your soul. That you should pen tishakach et hadevarim. Maybe you will forget these words and these things that you saw. Ask the Mishnah, well, what if I just happened to forget? Not that I made myself forget, not that I actively forgot something, but rather that I happened to forget something. What's the halacha in that case? Answers the Mishnah, no, then you're not obligated. The only time where we're saying this thing is when a person sat down with the express intent, if you will, to eradicate something from their memory. In such a case, in a situation like that, then already we're going to say, mitchayev benafsho, the person is liable for his own punishment. Now, I want to share with you, this Mishnah, like every Mishnah that we ever learned together, is no different from any other Mishnah with regards to the fact that it speaks to a much wider understanding than what it's talking about. Because in fact, it sounds like the Mishnah first thought that you could be liable for being forgetful. And the Mishnah had to come and bring a pasuk. No, the pasuk says, Uven yasuru milevavecha. What does it mean? It means that you removed it. You made yourself forget something. Okay? So if that's the case, it sounds like the initial assumption was that you could be obligated for something that you have no control over. How could that be? So I want to share a general principle. Okay? There's a general principle that we find in many, many halachot and many, many mitzvot, which I think is very helpful. The principle goes as follows. The Torah tells us, "Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha," you have to love your fellow Jew like yourself. The question everybody asks is, but what if I don't love him? What do you want me to do? Love is not something that I choose. Love is something that I feel. So if I feel connected to him, I feel connected to him. I don't feel connected to him, I don't feel connected to him. What do you want from my life? Another example. The Torah says in the Seret HaDibrot, I want you to make sure that you never become jealous of anybody else. Okay, problem is, I looked at something, I saw their house, their wife, their animals, their cars, their properties or whatever, and I am jealous. What do you want from my life? That just is what I am. What would you like me to do about it? So there are many questions that are asked by many different mifarshim on this point. The Torah tells you can't be jealous, but I am. You can't tell me not to be. The Torah says, don't fear when you see your enemies. So you look up, you see the army, they're flipping Braveheart coming down the mountain. Roar! Everyone's coming with the horses, with the spears, thousands of soldiers. You see the blood in their eyes, they just want to kill, maim, pillage. You're terrified. Says the Torah, al tira, don't fear. Ve'al techat, don't tremble. I'm fearing. I'm trembling. I don't know what you want me to tell you, but I need to change my underwear. Like, come on. How can you regulate something that's beyond human control? Now, there are many examples like this. Someone asked me the other day, I'm in such a difficult place. I've lost my emunah. I don't have faith in Hashem. What are you going to tell someone like that? Have faith? You gotta have faith, the faith, the faith. It's great to sing, but can you mandate faith? In fact, there's a big discussion amongst the Rishonim. The first commandment, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, a person needs to believe in Hashem. So the commentators ask, what do you mean? How could you mandate that? Either you believe it or you don't believe it. If you don't believe in God, how does it help to have a commandment tell you you must believe in God? So in other words, if I already believe in God, what's the point in the commandment? If I don't believe in God, so then having that God give us a book that tells us to believe in him when I don't believe in him doesn't help at all. So one of the answers which is given to many of these questions is a very similar answer. And I want to point out one other element here. The Mishnah is telling us that if you forget any part of Torah, right? A person is mitchayev benafsho. What do we mean? What if I forgot about it? I just forgot it. It just slipped my mind. No, don't worry. It's when you sat down and made yourself forget. Does that even make sense? Can you even possibly make yourself forget something? Let's just try that for a second, okay? I'd like everyone, for 1 second, I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to forget coronavirus. Forget it, just forget it. It's impossible. If you try to forget something, the irony is that the harder you try to forget it, the more, what happens? The more you're thinking about it. Because in order to command you to forget it, what happens? You need to bring it to mind, to actively try to forget it. What happens? It doesn't disappear. So Lenore is saying you can forget something over time if you don't practice it. But let me ask you, Lenore, would you call that forgetting it? Or would you call that not practicing? So as an example, let's say someone decides they don't want to eat kosher anymore. Did they forget kosher? No, they didn't forget kosher. They're just not keeping kosher. Okay? So I want to drive home this point. I'm going to use a specific example of memory and the lack of memory. The Pasuk tells us something very interesting. All of you should know it because it's the one parasha in the Torah that you're obligated to actually go here. Says the Torah, Zachor et asher asa lecha Amalek Baderech besetchem Mitzrayim asher karecha. Right? Remember what Amalek did to you. Remember to erase their name from under the heavens. No one should know their name. Don't forget. Remember, don't forget. To ensure that no one remembers them. So each and every year, what do? We remind ourselves to not remember them. What? And let me point out something even stronger. There are many nations in Israel at the time when the Jewish people come from Egypt. You have the Girgashi, you have the Chivi, the Yevusi. Now, has anyone talked about or thought about the Jebusites, the Girgashites? None of us. None of us talk about this Shiva Amimim. So all that it took, actually, to forget about them was the fact that we weren't commanded to remember them. So what is God telling us when he says, I want you to remember Amalek, to forget them? The answer is something very powerful, and that is, the nature of memory is not just about a person being able to recall something. Oh, I remember something from a long time ago. That's not what we talk about when we talk about Zachor, remembering something. I always point this out on Yom HaZikaron. In Hebrew, the word for Zikaron, for memory, shares its root with the word Zachar, which means male. So what about the memorial process is related to being male? In fact, if I'm not mistaken, men are more predisposed to forget things than women. Just ask every wife in the world. Did you remember? No, honey. Okay? So what is the connection between those two? And I remember reading something fascinating. You know, in the biological process between a man and a woman, so the man is giving, so to speak, seed, and the woman's body is receiving that seed and nurturing it until it becomes a baby. So the man is giving something. It's called chomer. Okay, it's called tsura, and the woman then takes that shape, that potential, and creates it and allows that thing to become not just something of potential, but actually to become something. She takes this genetic code, this material, and that is now developed into an actual living, breathing human being. Okay? Neither is better or worse than the other. They just bring two different things to the table, and when they do, the result of that actually is something that exists forever. The Zachar process is not passive, so to speak, it's active. The female part in becoming pregnant, so to speak, can be passive. The male part is active. Says the Torah, you think about something actively, you will remember it. If you are passive about something, that is not memorial. So when on Yom HaZikaron or on Yom HaShoah, you're trying to remember something, and you sat in a speech and someone spoke at you, and for 1 second, the synapses in your brain said, oh yeah, the Holocaust. Oh yeah, the Israeli soldiers died for us to get the land of Israel. That's not what we're talking about when we talk about Zikaron. Zikaron means, what did you do because you remembered it? What was your action? How did that fire you up to a point where you did something different because of that Zikaron, because of that memory? Is that clear? So that is the correlation between Zikaron, between memory and Zachar. It is the action that comes from memory. Now, we look now at this Mishnah and we see something a little bit different. The Mishnah says, if you forget something, mitchayev b'nafsho, you forget one bit of Torah, mitchayev b'nafsho, you know, you're liable to be punished by death. From one thing, I forgot what he's talking about. Now, there's a couple commentators actually that say, this Mishnah is no longer relevant, because it can't be. What, you forgot one Mishnah, that's it? You forgot one idea? How could that be? And they answer, they say, this is referring to the time when they were giving over Torah Sheba'al Peh. They were passing along the body of Torah, father to son, mother to daughter, from generation to generation. So you forgetting one thing is forgetting it forever. Reminds me of the famous idea that we say by Noach. It says that Noach, each day, he fed all of the animals in the Teva. One day he was late. He missed the Ari, the lion. And the lion sees that he missed his meal. He's late to his meal, swipes Noach, and Noach limps from that for the rest of his life. He's injured. Okay? The Mefarshim ask, because he forgot, there's 100 zillion animals he has to feed, everyone according to their schedule. Because he's late one time, Noach deserved that punishment. And the Mefarshim say something fascinating. They say that lion wasn't just a lion that Noach forgot. It was all lions to the end of time. Because there was only one set of lions in the Teva. There was one male lion, one female lion. If that lion starved, right, there would never be lions in the entire creation of the world, in the entire continuation of the world. So yes, for the eradication of an entire species, Noach deserved to be punished because he forgot it. Every person has an obligation, as our Talmud says, right, that the king of all Israel, Yoshiyahu, realized that Torah was being forgotten from the Jewish people. And he stood up and he said, Alai lehakim, I have to stand it up. There's only one lion. There's only one teacher. There's only one Torah. What happens if one law gets forgotten? So some of the commentators explain that this Mishnah was talking about a time where if the chain, the link of transmission was broken, then perhaps that Torah, that idea would be forgotten forever from the Jewish people. And that was one facet of godliness that we would never reclaim. Okay? But there's another idea here that I'd like to share with all of you. Not that it's only relevant then. It's relevant always. So why are we saying this is such a powerful idea? You forgot one Mishnah? Because we're not talking about when you happen to forget something, says the Mishnah. We're talking about when a person allowed themselves to forget something. One of my favorite memories from being in yeshiva, and a lot of times people ask, why is it so important for a boy to go and study in Israel for the year? A lot of kids are being encouraged to go and spend that time. What's the difference? He's going to come back. He's going to go to work afterwards. For many people, they're not going to stay in yeshiva forever. What's the point? Let him start college earlier. Let him start working earlier. Why does he need to go to Israel? And I think people are forgetting an incredibly important point, and that is that it's not that you just sit and learn a Gemara in yeshiva in Israel, that you could hire a tutor and learn that same Gemara here. It's an immersion in an experience. You're meeting characters and you don't have anywhere else to run, and you're not running from here to there. You're immersed in this experience for a long time. Yeshivot, seminaries. And people gain as much by osmosis from watching as they do from anything else. And I just want to share with you one thing that I've shared before, but to me it's so indelibly etched in my memory that it speaks to this Mishnah specifically. I remember when I got married, so I moved to learn in the Mir Yeshiva. And I was invited to be amongst a select group to go study at the house of the Rosh Yeshiva at the time, Rev Nassan Tzvi Finkel. I went to his house. There was a small group of us, very select. I felt incredibly honored and humbled. It was our first time ever. I was there early. I get there, I walk in, and I see the Rosh Yeshiva. They open the door. He's lying on his couch. I'm the first guy there. He's chilling, like this, is lying back. His legs are up, crossed on the couch. He's flat, he's stretched out, just relaxed. I was like, fantastic. This is exactly my type of rabbi. Love it. Anyway, more people join. This is my first time actually meeting him in person. Anyway, as everybody walks in, they're ready to start. The Rosh Yeshiva is still lying there on the couch. I was like, all right, is it going to be one of those kind of classes? Just rapping with the rabbi, chilling on his couch? Is that how this works? And then he got up to sit at the table with us. And the instant he unlocked his fingers and he undid his shoes, which were crossed on the, is when I saw that his legs started shaking, but not tremors, full on shaking. Okay, his arms were, again, it's hard for me to describe it, but his arms were flailing. They weren't shaking, they were flailing. They were just, he had zero control over his arms and legs, and all of a sudden it hit me, idiot. He's not a chiller. He wasn't relaxing. He was holding his hands. He was holding his feet. But now that he needed to speak and teach, so it was like someone had let loose his limbs. Again, please, I don't mean this for disrespect, but I need you to understand the level. It reminded me, the only thing that I could think of in that moment when I saw his arms all over the place and his legs just knees moving, was that blow up thing that you see outside the used car sales, the big thing with the air. That's what he looked like, okay? And it drove home. When I was walking back afterwards, I said, I don't understand. What is he shaking with? What does he suffer from? And they said he suffers from advanced Parkinson's. I said, so why doesn't he get it treated? I mean, I know other people that have Parkinson's too. And they said the following. When he got his Parkinson's, he had a phone call from Rav Mordechai Gifter from Cleveland. Rav Mordechai Gifter also had Parkinson's and had taken the medication. And he called him up and he said to him, Rav Nassim Tzvi, he says, promise me you won't take the medication. Promise me. Why? He says, because it stopped my hands and my feet and the tremors and the shaking. He says, but I can't remember. I can't remember my Torah, he says. Rav Nassim Tzvi never took the medication. Because for him it was more important to remember all the toil, all the wisdom, all the magnificent ideas of Torah than it was to just have his arms move a little less. I just sat there, when you hit something, hits you so you can't, and I'm just sitting there just remembering, the flailing and just understanding that it must have been something which was embarrassing. But for him, it didn't matter. That wasn't important. What was important was that he'd remember that all the words, all the wisdom, all the chokhmah that God gave to our world through the Torah. You understand, it's not about the Gemara that I learned there. It was my relationship with Torah, my understanding of it, that I acquired, the importance of it from witnessing giants like this and how seriously they took it. Okay? So what we're seeing over here in the Mishnah is that the Torah is telling us, don't forget. But it doesn't mean don't let it slip out of your mind. It means don't do something that will allow you to forget. Now, I want to go back to our original question. How do you love someone if you don't love them? How do you not be jealous of them if you're jealous of them? How do you not be afraid of the enemy if you are afraid? And the answer is, no one is trying to regulate your feelings. No one's trying to regulate the way you feel. What we're trying to regulate is, what are you doing to influence said feelings? In this instance, are you taking or not taking the medication? Again, I'm not telling someone not to take medication, God forbid. But I'm saying on whatever our level of this is. Somebody tells me, Rabbi, I don't know what happened. I've lost my connection to Judaism. I used to be so into it when I was in yeshiva high school. I don't know what happened. Does that sound familiar to any of you? Gotta love it, right? What happened? I said, what do you mean what happened? That was 25 years ago, Rohi. When you were in yeshiva high school. When you went on Shabbaton. When you sang the songs. That was a long time ago. And because it was a long time ago, of course you're forgetting your connection with it. So what are you doing to mimic what you were doing when you loved Judaism? Back then, you were putting in this effort and this effort and this effort. Are you doing that now? And if you're not, why are you surprised? So the Torah says, you don't love your neighbor? Okay, do the things that generate love for your neighbor. And that is the mitzvah of ve'ahavta. It means bringing him chalot erev Shabbat. It means calling them to see how they're doing. By the way, even if you don't care, fake it till you make it. You know why? Because the deeds that we do create an indelible impression upon our psyche. It is no wonder that people love their children more than anything else in the world. You know why? Because you've done more for your children than you've done for anybody else. People tell me, Rabbi, is that wrong that I love my kids more than my spouse? I said, your kids have needed you to do more for them than your spouse ever needed you to do. And we know that one of the secrets of love in Judaism is that the root of the word ahava, which means love, is the word hav, which means to give. Okay? The more you're giving to something, the more invested you are in its success, the more you love the thing because it reflects your success. When your children are doing great, you take credit for that. When your husband or your wife does great, a little bit harder to take credit. We can say nice lines about how, I am the man that I am because, I am the woman that I am because. You can say that. But with your children, like you chose their school, you did their homework, you nursed their wounds, you raised them to be the people that they are. We are in many, many, many ways, at least in normal scenarios, right? Not in obviously certain cases, but in normal scenarios, we're products of our parents, of the efforts that they put into us. In fact, the Talmudic expression of this is, Bira, a son, Kira de'avua. He's his father's leg. Okay? He's part and parcel of his dad. It's why the mitzvot that we do, especially when our parents have passed on, are so powerful for them on their behalf in Shamayim. The Kaddish that we'll say, the Mishnayot that we learn, because we're literally, so to speak, connected, an inextricable part of our mother and our father. So when we come to this Mishnah, we actually realize something magnificent. Asks the Torah, tell me about your behaviors. You're jealous of someone? So what do you need to do in order to fuel that jealousy? And what do you need to do in order to defuel that jealousy? There was a great bit of wisdom that was passed down. And it said that there are two great wolves fighting for a piece of meat inside of every human being. They're each pulling at the piece of meat. One is the Yetzer HaTov and one is the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer HaTov is pulling at the piece of meat, trying to get it to come to its side. Yetzer Hara is pulling at the piece of meat, ourselves, trying to get it to come to its side. So said the student to the master, well, which wolf wins? He said, whichever wolf you feed. You're nourishing one wolf, that wolf will be stronger. You're nourishing the other wolf, that wolf will be stronger. How do we feed our Yetzer HaTov? By giving him food. Food doesn't mean ekel, it doesn't mean steak. Food means you go to tefillah, you pray at home, you do acts of kindness, you keep Shabbat properly, you honor the holidays, you teach your children Torah, Torah and connection to Judaism. All the mitzvot that a person does, they're feeding the Yetzer HaTov until effectively the Yetzer HaTov gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger until the Yetzer Hara is no match for him. And vice versa, Has v'Shalom is the same. So says the Mishnah, you want to know what kind of forgetting? You want to know what kind of forgetting I'm going to take you to task for? The kind of forgetting that you're in control over, where you let yourself forget. I had a conversation a couple days ago with a group of rabbis, okay? And the topic was about a certain rabbi who, someone who had lost their hearing, came to the rabbi, and he asked him for a beracha. He said, please, I struggle with my hearing. I'm a young man. I shouldn't have to deal with this. La, 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 please, heartbroken. The rabbi says to him, sure, tell me your name. I'm going to say Tehillim. The rabbi says, beautiful Tehillim for him, Hazaku Baruch, unbelievable. Okay? 4 years later, the rabbi comes in again. This man comes, my friend, comes to visit this great tzaddik. And he walks in and he says to the rabbi, so nice to meet you. Can I ask you for a beracha? My name. And the rabbi cuts him off. He says, of course, your name is David ben Avraham. He says, yeah, I've been praying for your hearing. He saw him once amongst thousands of people, and he remembered his name. Anyway, everyone's like, wow, in the chat, what an amazing rabbi. And I'm like, that's depressing for me. What, you met a guy one time 4 years ago, not only do you remember his name, you remember his Hebrew name, his David ben Avraham name. Like, come on. Who can do that? How do you do that? And I said, maybe not after 4 years for a guy I met once. How do you remember the name of everyone in shul? How do you remember the name of everyone that comes to the class? How do you remember the names of the people that you meet in the community so that the next time you meet them, you don't know their name, right? And people feel very aggrieved. You don't know my name, Rabbi? Rabbi, do you know my name? You know who I am, right? You know who I am. People feel bad, and it's impossible to remember everybody. So I said, none of us are going to get to that level, but how do we get to a place where we could remember more people's names? And the response from the various rabbis in the group, there was a lot of different ideas, tricks to remember people's names. One trick like this, one trick like that, another trick like this. None of them spoke to me. I've tried this before. Like, I don't know if any of you has ever had this before. These efforts. Like, your name is Ben, which rhymes with pen, and so every time I see you, I think of a ballpoint, a clicker pen, and next time you see him, you're like, oh, pen, Ben, hey. I don't know. I tried this. It didn't work for me. Sometimes I'd remember that the guy's name was Coat. Like, you know what I mean? And you don't even know what you were trying to remind yourself by thinking of it didn't work for me. It didn't work for me. But then someone said something that actually resonated, quite strongly. And he said that, when you meet someone, ask them to tell you something about themselves. Something that was very meaningful, that what their most meaningful Jewish experience is, or the greatest lesson they ever learned from their father, or something that is powerful, that resonates. Because when something is shared with you by somebody that is emotive, it touches you. So your association with that thing is now a precious memory. You're like, wow, I remember that. I gotta remember. When we say, I gotta write that down. That's amazing. I gotta remember that. Oh, I gotta tell that. I gotta tell that to my dad. When you hear something that resonates and you think, oh, that's meaningful. The challenge is that we meet a lot of people that actually they might not be so meaningful to us. There's a channel called Meaningful Minute. They spread Torah unbelievably. There's such amazing organizations out there to teach Torah. Meaningful Minute and Torah Anytime and iTorah and God, amazing, right? Using technology in the most beautiful way. So Meaningful Minute kind of partnered up, and they're doing this thing, a meaningful podcast where they're meeting meaningful people. And that word, the name itself kind of struck me, Aren't all people meaningful? Aren't they meaningful to somebody? And maybe that's what they mean, people that are meaningful to lots of people, who inspire lots of people. I'm guessing that's the connection, that's the point. But when you make somebody meaningful, when you make the interaction that you had with them meaningful, it creates a much stronger connection, an impression in your brain, and then it's much easier to remember their name. The reason why I love that was not because it was a good trick to help me remember people's names, but because I thought it was a great trick to actually interact and connect with people whether or not you remembered their name. Just so that when you meet someone, you valued meeting them. You thought, wow, this person, I loved meeting them. It meant something to me that I met them, that I crossed paths with them. Fantastic. Now, suddenly, the Mishnah comes into a much sharper kind of position for me. Because when we're talking about remembering and forgetting, remembering or forgetting people, remembering, forgetting, it really comes down to, did you allow or did you create opportunities for Torah and Judaism to be very important to you? Yesterday I was at a Pidyon Haben. Mabruk again to the Mishan family. Magnificent Pidyon. Azaku Baruch Mars, amazing. Eddie, gorgeous, okay? Don't worry, we were all socially distant and everything was lovely. Outdoors, okay? But one of the things I said is that there's a very funny line in there that we say at the Pidyon. What do we say? We say to the father, what would you rather? You're going to give these 5 coins to the Kohen. Would you rather the 5 coins or would you rather the Kohen? Everyone's like, and the guy's like, oh, I'll take my son. Everyone's like, ah. Right? Now that sounds like a crazy thing. Do you prefer money or your child? But actually, a lot of times we're making decisions where we're choosing our money, our job, our whatever, our phone call for work before our children. What are you doing? You just chose money over your child. Now there's those that will argue and say, no, I need the money for my children. I got it. But bottom line, there are a lot of times when we do choose money over children, power over children, honor over children. Right? Where you know that the kid needs you to say or do or be A, but your honor or your ego will only allow you to be B. What did you choose? My ba'it tefeh. What did you want more? Because what you want more, you're going to run after that. In fact, in Hebrew, as I'm fond of pointing out, the word rotzeh, which means to want, is also the same root as the word ratz, which means to run. We run after that which we want. So says the Mishnah, what do you want? You don't forget your favorite restaurant, your favorite item on the menu in your favorite restaurant. You don't come there and you're like, oh, what's my favorite thing again? If your favorite, then you know it. Right? That's what the Mishnah here is communicating to us. It's asking us to learn Torah in a way, to seek out people who teach Torah in a way, to find subjects within Torah which are interesting, which kind of, they pick our curiosity. I never thought of that. I want to learn more about that. Suddenly, there's something, you've created a relationship with this, which doesn't allow you to forget because it's so meaningful to you. Okay? So, I want to kind of draw this out if I can, together with you on one other point. All right? The Mishnah says a fascinating line. It tells us that in the time of Mashiach, a lot of Torah is going to be forgotten. And the lashon of Chazal is very interesting. What does it mean that they're going to forget? Yeah, that they're going to forget the words of Torah. The exact example is, it says, it's going to be Atidah. The Sifri says in Parshat Ekev, Atidah Torah shetishtachach miYisrael. There'll come a time when Torah is going to be forgotten from Israel. Kihahu tayar, like that traveler, that tourist, haholech me'ir la'ir, that goes from city to city, umimdina lemedina, and from country to country. Rav Shalom Shuadron says, I never understood this. What does that mean? People are gonna forget Torah like a tourist? What does that mean? He says, until he met this guy from his shul. There was a guy in his area, all right? Hazit, this guy, he had wanderlust, they say. He just wanted to tour the world. Some people like to travel, and then I love this, they get from here, they go to Rome. And what do? They sleep in the whole time in their hotel. Then they go out to eat. And you ask them, they come back. Did you see this? Did you see? No, I didn't see anything. Did you go to Eiffel Tower? No, I was in my hotel. I went to the spa. You needed to go to France to stay in your hotel and have a massage and go out eat nice food. You could eat nice food here. You could stay in a hotel here. You don't need to do that, right? So some people love to travel. There's 2 kinds of people. They get to where they're going and then they're running out of their hotel. And the other spouse is like, nah, I just want to relax. Why don't we just chill here, have a drink in the lobby, And the other's like, what do we need to fly all the way here for? All right? This guy had the wanderlust. He had the bug. He wanted to travel. He loved traveling. He loved seeing all these places. Problem is, Haddad didn't have a dime to his name, poor guy. So he told the rabbi, you know what, Rabbi, I can't afford to travel, but I'm desperate. I got to see the world. So every single day, he came home from work with $1, he would put aside 2 cents. Next day, $2, 4 cents. For years, this man is collecting money. For years. Every day, a few pennies, a week, he might make $1 in a week, like nothing. But week by week, month by month, year by year, decade by decade, this guy's travel fund is growing until eventually he comes to the rabbi and he says, Rabbi, you don't know. I got it. I put it together enough. I got this ticket. I'm going to go travel the whole world. I'm going to go see it all. It's going to be amazing. And you could see the guy's face is shining. He's so happy. Rabbi says, okay, you're going to go travel. Azak Baruch. Like we say in Hebrew, Sal l'shalom, v'tachzor l'shalom. Go in peace and return in peace. The guy goes. How long he's gone, I don't know. He comes back. The rabbi sees him in the street. He's got a briefcase on his back. He says, hey, how are you? The guy sees Rav Shalom Shwadron. His face is shining. Rabbi, oh my God, I have so much to catch you up on. You don't understand. I was in Paris and I saw the Eiffel Tower. As soon as he starts talking, the bag comes off of his shoulder. He's got this giant photo album. Look, this is me by the Eiffel Tower. This is me by the Leaning Tower of Pisa. This is me by by Times Square. This is me when I went to Budapest by the bridge. This is me by the Charles Bridge in Prague. This is me by Kremlin in Russia. And one after next, Niagara Falls. Picture after picture after picture after picture of all the beautiful sights. He says, Rabbi, you don't know, my life's dream was to travel the world. He says, and I saw the whole world. Rav Shalom says, wow, it's amazing. I'm so glad you got to go. I see how much simcha it brought you. Anyway, the man leaves, and Rav Shwadron's face just bursts into the most beautiful smile. Why? Rav Shalom explained, he says, I finally understood what the Sifri meant. There'll come a day when the Torah is going to be forgotten. Like what? Like a tourist who goes from city to city, from country to country. You have a guy travel here from China. Not now, after the virus, okay? You have a guy come travel here from Argentina. What do? They run to Times Square to take a picture on the stairs. What do they tell everyone? I was in Manhattan. I went, I saw New York. Did you? You sat on red stairs. You saw, don't get me wrong, giant ads, but huge ads and billboards. You saw New York, right? You got the urban flavor of Brooklyn. Japran Shadet Zion, right? Did you get a chance to go, to walk, the high line? What do you mean when you say you saw New York? Did you feel the pulse of the city, or did you take a picture on red stairs? You hear? A lot of times a person's relationship with something might be very cursory. It might be that I got a picture with the object that makes it look like I'm there. But actually, did I get the flavor? Did I meet the people? Was I insulted by a New Yorker? Who then, by the way, gave me directions and then, flagged me a cab after cursing my grandma? New Yorkers are rough around the edges, but they're very friendly. Underneath the rudeness, they're very friendly. In England, I always used to notice they're much more polite, but much less helpful. Absolutely, yes, sir. No, I can't help you. All right? So, ladies and gentlemen, what Rav Shalom was communicating is that there's a lot of Torah that we learn. And I notice this a lot of times when I'll be saying something, in the Torah, and I'll say, and then Yaakov said to Esav, and then Abraham said to Noach, and you have people, they're quoting the pasuk back. And I say to them, do you remember? Oh, excellent. What does that mean? I don't know. I just remember the line. That's a snapshot. It's a picture at the Eiffel Tower. It's a beautiful thing that you have the knowledge. It's a beautiful thing. And sometimes I actually found that when I'm teaching people Judaism, Torah, their previous knowledge was not a help, it was a hindrance. Because they thought that they knew it. And because they thought that they knew it, they didn't feel like they needed to engage to actually learn it like an adult. Because they learned it as a kid. And they remain with the childish understanding for the rest of their life. Someone who doesn't know, they don't come with the arrogance. They come with the humility that I don't know anything. Teach me. So everything that you're learning, they're really trying to understand. They're really trying to work out. So Rabotai, what we're learning over here is something, unbelievable. We're learning about the relationship with Torah. The desire to know is as important as the knowledge itself. Because the knowledge can just be a snapshot that you were there, you visited this idea, you took a picture with an idea, you took a picture with a Mishnah, you have a beautiful you took a selfie with a Gemara, as opposed to allowing that to motivate you, zikaron, zachar, towards action. Now, I want to end with one simple idea, and then I want to share something really, really powerful, and we're going to do an exercise because those of you who have done this before will know that the intention of this is to be a workshop, not a class that you sit passively through. So, Rav Shalom tells a most unbelievable story. He says that when there was a rabbi whose name was Rav Baruch Tam, okay? And he was someone who was an incredible tzaddik, but actually suffered from memory loss in the end of his life. It was very difficult for him. So he would sit there and he would study and study and study, and he would study all by heart because he couldn't actually, it was difficult for him to see, etc. But he remembered everything that he learned from way back in the day, okay? But he was very forgetful otherwise. Some guy comes to visit the Beit David, this rabbi, and as he's sitting there, studying, a man walks in to collect some money. All right, not the Baruch Tam, excuse me, Beit David. As the man is sitting there, he comes to collect the money. I'm just going to turn to so I have the quote exactly. Right? He walks in, and the man says, "I'm collecting money for this and this organization." The rabbi stops. He's saying over the Gemara with the Rashi, Tosafot, all the commentators just whipping it out just like this, boom, 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 boom. And he says to him, "Yes, can I help you?" He says, "I'm collecting money." He says, "No problem. Here's some money for the yeshiva. Zaku Baruch, thank you for coming." Anyway, the guy, he starts walking out. Immediately, the rabbi jumps back in, exactly where he left off, and he carries on. He's plugging away by heart, not missing a word. Rashi, Tosafot, explanations like this, like fascinating. The rabbi's sitting there watching in the back, this collector, and he thinks this is amazing. He's so inspired that this rabbi who's forgotten so much is sitting here studying by heart, word for word. 2 minutes go by. The rabbi lifts up his eyes while he's studying. He says, welcome. How can I help you? Didn't even remember 2 minutes ago that he gave him money. The man says to him, "No, rabbi, please." He says, "You gave me already. Don't worry. I'm just here. I'm enjoying. I'm watching. You study with such excitement, with such reverence. It's so beautiful. I'm just sitting here. Just please don't let me disturb." The rabbi says, "Oh, no problem." Boom, he's learning. 2 minutes later, "Oh, hey, how are you, Rabbi Yid? How can I help you? What are you here for?" The guy again, each time, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. He goes to visit the Chafetz Chaim, this collector. Okay, and he tells the Chafetz Chaim this story. Right? He explains to him, and the two of them are sitting there thinking, wow, a man can forget so much else, but this he remembers. The rabbi told him, he says, "I forget so much, but this Shas, my Gemara, it's so dear to me," he says. "I hold on to every word. I haven't been able to forget. I haven't forgot one thing," he said. Chafetz Chaim and the man were very moved by the story. The man leaves. A little while later, when the rabbi passed away, the Chafetz Chaim asked this collector, he says, "Please, I'll pay. Can you get in on a train? Travel to Radin. I'm going to give a big speech, a memorial speech, a eulogy after the rabbi passed, and I want you to come and say what you said to me, what you witnessed. How, when someone loves something, they don't forget it." Okay? The guy says, "Rabbi, this was a great rabbi. You're a great rabbi. I'm just a tzedakah collector. You want me to give the speech? You should give the speech." The Chafetz Chaim, "Don't worry, I'm going to give the speech, but you need to come tell the story. Say what you saw with your own eyes." Okay? He comes, it's tremendous Kiddush Hashem, everyone hears. You know what I took from this story? What I took from this story is not just about forgetting a piece of Torah. It's about forgetting mitzvot. If the Omer is so important to you, you don't forget the Omer. I used to, a long time ago, I used to be like, teenage years, I hope I make it through the Omer. every year was a struggle, and then one year I made it, and for next year you forget one night when you go to sleep. But then eventually there came a point where I didn't miss for years. And it's not that my memory improved. It's that it became so much a part, this idea, you can't forget the Omer, mustn't forget the Omer, that you know what happened? I'd remind myself numerous times a day. Do you remember the Omer? Say it at Shaharit. There's a custom in the Syrian community. When they say it in the middle of Shaharit, they finish, they go, Hayom, Hamisha Yamim La Omer. They say it in the morning because we don't want to forget it. People, when they ask each other during the day, remember the Omer last night? Remember the Omer? Going to bed. The other night, I had to stay over by my parents in the basement. My brother, you remember the Omer? Remember the Omer? It became more important to me. And suddenly I stopped forgetting it. What things in our lives are we forgetting to do? And we tell, I forgot. What things in our life are we forgetting to do because we haven't figured out how to make them important enough? That's what this Mishnah is teaching us. It's telling us that if you make something important, you won't forget to do it. You won't forget it. But that's not just true of the Torah. It's true about people. It's true about things. The things that we tell ourselves that we want to do, then just slip our mind. We have power over those things. We can dial that back and actually make it work in a way where we don't forget someone's birthday, someone's pain, someone's challenge, someone's request, because we've made it important to ourselves. So one of the things I'd like to ask is, as we said, is to workshop this, is to think to ourselves the following thought exercise. And with this we're going to close out, okay? Next time someone that you love asks you for something, okay? I want you to think, not, I have to go to the store. Not I have to go to the store. Someone asks you, or there's a very important day that they want you to remember, right? Not, I have to remember my anniversary. I have to remember that. But think, it is important to this person. Tie the memory to your love of that person. So, you want to remember, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat L'Kadesho. How are you going to remember Shabbat to ensure that you don't make mistakes, by mistake do this, or by mistake forget to get that, and by mistake, and then you wind up having a Shabbat which isn't as memorable as it could have been. Tie it to your love of that thing. Identify why and how you love somebody or something, and then say to yourself, I need to remember this because it is important to my wife. It is important to my son, to my daughter. It is important to my community. Now, memory is not just something like I have to go to the store, but it's something that actually permeates the way we live each and every day of our whole life. So as an example, when you go to a class, and in the class they talk about being accepting of your children, of your spouses, being accepting of people's faults, and you think to yourself, I got to remember that. What happens? Are you going to remember it? Probably not. So give it a face. Give it a face. Think of that thing where you hurt somebody by not being willing to accept or understand them. Think of your heart, what it feels for that person. And think to yourself as an example, it is important to my wife that I love, who is so XYZ, that when she doesn't do this or when she does that I should see it in this light. I want you to try and spell that out for something that you promise yourself. I promised myself I would remember to be more patient. I promised myself that I would remember to be more loving. Okay, then what happens? Life happens. But if work is really important because you have a great work ethic, you remember to go to work. No one ever I forgot to go to work today. Who can remember that they're employed? Yeah? You don't forget that because you've built it in. You set an alarm on your clock that you should get up on time to go to your job. Did you set an alarm to make sure that you remembered to be more kind? Did you set an alarm to remember that this is time? I have to remember 3 times a day to speak less lashon hara. Set it in your calendar. Something that you want to remember. Do the actions that will allow you to remember to transfer something from a random synapse in your brain into something which is actual and real. You are capable with your imagination, each and every one of us. If I told you to think of a pink alien flying a bright blue spaceship, all of you just thought of it, no problem. Your brain can come up with any thought in the world. But it's not the thought that actually makes something. It's then when I take that thought and figure out how to give it clothes, how to let it live in my world. So that's what I'm encouraging each and every one of us to do based on this Mishnah. Don't forget the Torah. Oh, not if you happen to forget it. Don't do things that will make you forget it. That refers to the actions we take to solidify something in our lives. To solidify for you and for me the idea that I will be there for my friend who is suffering. So what happens? You hear the story, you're like, oi, and you're not sketching with that oi. You really mean it. Sketching with oi is a great cross-cultural reference right there. All right? You're not faking it. You really feel their pain. But now what? But now what? If I set a reminder 2 days a week, randomly stick it in my calendar, call my friend, then you zachar'd your zikaron. You know you're jealous of your friend. Stop running down their Instagram feed. You know it makes you jealous. Stop. Unfollow. Unless that's going to cause its own broigas, right? Figure out a way to do that. You're afraid when you go into war. No one's telling you that you're not allowed to be afraid. We're saying go to classes on Emunah. Buy Rabbi Asher's book, Living Emunah, and learn every day about what it means to have more Emunah, so that when you get to that situation again, you've made the concrete investment that it shouldn't be the same, that you shouldn't be the same. That is the power of this Mishnah. Over and abroad, so to speak. Over and away, not just about the word Torah, but about everything that is Torah related. This rabbi, for him, Shas was the most important thing. So he didn't forget it. But the other things, it didn't matter to him if he gave a couple extra dollars to a guy because he didn't remember whether or not he'd given him the money. He didn't make space for that in his brain. He didn't make space for that in his life. That's up to you and me. What are we sticking in? What are we, with our hands, taking out? What are we scheduling out of our life simply by not scheduling? There's a line that you need to take with you from this, and that is, failing to plan is planning to fail. A lot of people just think, oh, I failed to plan. I failed to remember. Failing to remember is actively forgetting. Failing to plan is actively forgetting. And we have in our hands the ability to turn that story around. I want to end by wishing also a refuah shlema to Esther Bat Farida, to each and every one of you for joining us. Please share the class on your social media so that as many people can have an opportunity to learn. Like it on Instagram and Facebook so that more people through the algorithm will get a chance to see it. People say, Rabbi, I wish everyone could hear it. So you could say that and then forget it, or you could do something that will actually make sure that it gets to everybody. There's a Shavuot program that we're going to be running tomorrow at 7 p.m. I hope all of you will join us. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we will enter into this remarkable holiday in the best possible way, with the strength of Torah, with the ability to remember and to master it. Me'ata va'ad olam. Thank you so much for joining.
You can follow us on Instagram and on Facebook. The live feed is on at Rabbi Shlomo Farhi on Instagram. And what's it called? The Safra Synagogue. You'll find it on Instagram and on Facebook as well. We advertise and let you know about all of our events and classes. You can see them there. Hazaku Baruch. See you guys soon.